Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping right into a concept that is practically guaranteed to change how you look at your entire life. We're talking about the human addiction to one tiny four-letter word, the word mine. We'll see how this obsession creates so much visceral anxiety for us, and how some ancient texts offer a fascinating and, honestly, deeply liberating alternative.
So, what if you own absolutely nothing? Just sit with that provocative question for a second. It immediately challenges this incredibly heavy, exhausting burden of modern ownership that we're all carrying around every single day. What would it actually feel like to wake up and truly believe you possess zero things in this physical world?
Because right now, our default is this: my money, my house, my wife, my kids, my career, my life. It's literally the mantra of the human ego. But here is the massive psychological trap. The exact second you claim ownership over anything in this physical realm, you instantly create the absolute terror of losing it. That single word, mine, is basically the root of so much of our anxiety, our greed, and our conflicts.
Let's look at Section 1, the illusion of ownership, where we compare the owner versus the caretaker. Now, this idea of divine stewardship fundamentally redefines who we are. Under this paradigm, we aren't permanent possessors of our bank accounts, our bodies, or even our time. No, we are merely temporary stewards. We're caretakers navigating a deposit of life that ultimately belongs to God the Father, and we do it without attaching our own ego and identity to all this stuff.
Moving to Section 2, Tenets of the Earth. Let's trace where this actually started in the Old Testament. This passage brilliantly illustrates the ultimate worldview of these ancient texts. Under the law of Moses, selling land permanently was strictly forbidden. Why? Because God is the sole landlord of the universe. Human beings are basically just tenants, foreigners and strangers passing through, who simply cannot sell what doesn't actually belong to them. You can actually see this right from the very beginning in the Garden Mandate. Humanity's very first historical mandate wasn't to possess the earth, it was to tend it. Adam was placed in Eden as a groundskeeper. It was only later, when the human ego tried to claim authority and possess knowledge for itself, that mankind was literally evicted from the estate.
King David captures this perfectly. Here's a guy gathering absolutely massive wealth to build the temple, and he completely refuses to boast about his own generosity. He deeply understood the mechanics of managing God's resources. He knew he was just returning what had been handed to him in the first place.
Section 3 is Stewards of the Mind, looking at how this whole idea shifts in the New Testament.
Jesus elevates the concept here with the parable of the talents. A master leaves deposits for his servants based on their abilities. The faithful stewards don't claim the wealth as their own. They manage those given capacities with total excellence and return them. Meanwhile, the wicked steward hoards and buries his talent out of resentment and fear, and he ultimately loses the exact thing he was desperately trying to hold on to.
And Paul completely obliterates the illusion of personal ownership here, expanding stewardship to our very selves. He argues that even your physical body is not your property. It's a temple entrusted to your care. You were bought with a price, meaning your entire life is a sacred assignment, not a personal possession. This perfectly extends to how we handle wealth. A true steward uses physical money, what Jesus called worldly wealth or unrighteous mammon, simply as a practical tool to navigate the world and serve other people. You use Caesar's coins to pay the bills and do good, but your heart remains totally unattached. The very moment you start worshiping the tool, you lose the peace of being a caretaker.
Let's dive into Section 4, Wisdom of Hidden Texts, specifically looking at the suppressed apocrypha.
This right here is perhaps the shortest, punchiest, and most radical summary of divine stewardship you'll ever hear. Just 2 words from the Gospel of Thomas: be passersby.
The Gospel of Thomas expands on this beautifully. When asked what his disciples are like, Jesus says they're like children in a field that isn't theirs, ready to give the physical field back without putting up a fight. The metaphor is just stunning. Walk through this physical world exactly like a guest in a hotel. You use the bed, you eat the food, you pay the bill, but you never ever pretend you actually own the building.
These hidden texts give us a really fascinating historical contrast. In the book of Enoch, you see the catastrophic sin of tyrants, the Nephilim, treating the earth like their own personal playground, violently exploiting and devouring resources. Contrast that with the book of Tobit. Tobit is the model righteous administrator. He manages his massive wealth purely as a temporary deposit, using it entirely to relieve the suffering of others without hoarding a single coin out of vanity.
That brings us to Section 5, ego versus divine stewardship. Let's map these two worldviews side by side. This comparison reveals a really stark, visceral difference. The fallen world of the ego operates on "this is mine," and that directly leads to fear, territorial rage, hoarding, and constantly trying to control your family. But the awakened spirit, it operates on "everything belongs to God." That yields a silent peace, the ability to manage with excellence, and tending to your family as God's children. It's literally the despair of the ego versus the quiet confidence of the caretaker.
Finally, Section 6, Living the Caretaker Life, and how we actually apply this.
So how do we apply this today? First, drop the word mine from your vocabulary. Realize your money is just Caesar's paper entrusted to you. Second, manage whatever resource or job is in front of you with total discipline and excellence. Treat it as an honored assignment. And third, hold everything with an open palm. Stop trying to control outcomes and instead focus entirely on being a faithful manager.
Job understood this perfectly, didn't he? He lost his wealth, his health, and his family in a single day. Yet miraculously, his inner peace remained undisturbed. He didn't collapse into despair because he possessed the ultimate awareness. He knew he never truly owned any of those things to begin with.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final question to chew on. What are you ready to stop owning and start stewarding? Imagine the absolute lightness, the profound relief from your daily anxiety that you'll feel when you finally drop the heavy illusion of ownership. Try being a passerby today and just see how it changes absolutely everything.